I remember opening a gift box with the PlayStation 2 for Christmas when I was 7 years old, and how excited I was to hold the most desirable thing in the world. This is not me, by the way, but just a video from the internet. For Christmas, I got a Lego with Chinese characters on it, and I wasn't even a Star Wars fan. But having a console at home was the dream of every boy and man, of every generation, except this one. This is the first generation of consoles in which even PlayStation fans, which I am, hate Sony and what they're doing with this generation. And the biggest disappointment is that it's not going to get any better in the future, and here's why. The 9th generation consoles are the best place for 8th generation games, especially in the case of the PlayStation. The fact that Sony has more game studios than exclusives makes me wonder how they can shamefully screw up the objectively good PS5. 4 years ago, we got an incredible console. Good performance, great design, revolutionary DualSense, and probably the most legendary confrontation between a refrigerator and a Wi-Fi router in history. We got everything except games. All the things that made the PS4 the most popular console in the world, not counting the Nintendo Switch, where you have to play games with miserable 30 FPS graphics that are older than the average age of the console's target audience. But anyway, how after such a rich generation of games, we got a generation of platforms and remasters? Well, in fact, Sony's huge fall wasn't accidental, and it wasn't even caused by the failed recent releases. The PlayStation's catastrophic current state happened because of just one person. And I won't reveal that one person now for 2 reasons. First, it should be done at the end to increase the retention of this video, an important metric for YouTube. But secondly, when you see this picture, you should feel a fierce hatred for this motherfucker. And for that, you need a little context to understand why someone would want to destroy an entire Sony gaming generation. The first thing that comes to mind is that it's Phil Spencer, who, unlike this mysterious thief, has clear motives to destroy his main competitor. But no. Phil is just doing his job, buying studios, creating exclusives, and still figuring out the DualSense board. And I really like the way Xbox is developing now. Well, in most cases. They're not trying to compete with Sony, as they did during the time of the failed Xbox One. They're just doing their own thing. And you know, as ironic as it may sound, it's going to be Microsoft that can help Sony to get at least some new games into PS Store. The second person who comes to mind, the likely culprit behind the PlayStation's failure, is Mark Cerny. But it's not him either, and even his hairstyle doesn't make him a villain. Maybe a bit of a pedophile, but definitely not a bad person. By the way, Mark is a Sony legend, the lead architect of the PlayStation. It is to him that we should be grateful for creating the best consoles, and the PS5 Pro. He is so well versed in gaming hardware that he could even save us from the biggest problem, the need to choose between good quality and 60 FPS, a subject of ridicule from PC users. And Mark succeeded. His PS5 Pro became so powerful that the only thing Cerny was afraid of was making the consoles too expensive, which, of course, he did in the end. Besides, the lousy compromise between quality and 60 frames hasn't disappeared. But the failed PS5 Pro is not the only last nail in Sony's coffin. We still have a nail, PSVR 2, which has neither games nor the ability to run the games of the first PSVR. And somewhere nearby, a nail called PS Plus has been hammered in for several years. And I'm not going to tell you how great Game Pass is compared to PS Plus. As for me, the very concept of game subscription is very questionable. We have to pay money for a bunch of useless projects that we will never play. In addition, there are constant price increases for subscriptions. But if Microsoft's price increase is due to the acquisition of studios, and now some AAA game are added to the Game Pass on the day of the release, which is pretty cool, then after the price increase for the PS Plus subscription, nothing was added. Like, nothing at all. Yes, Ubisoft Classic appeared there. But I think after that, Sony should have reduced the price, not increased it. Because now, when I go to the PS Plus to pick another free indie platformer, I have to look at pathetic attempts to continue some of the best franchises in the gaming industry. So, a useless new PS, a pointless PS Plus, and 0 games. Wait. I see a guy sitting in front of the screen who has been disagreeing with me for a long time. I see he's already disliked me. And now he's starting to write a comment about how stupid I am because there are games on PS5, and there are like a lot of them. Let's break it down now. The PS5 has been on the market for about 4 years now, but there have been fewer exclusive games than FPS on the Nintendo Switch. Most of the so-called exclusives are either continuations of old franchises that are quite good or unnecessary remasters and remakes. In the PS3 era, we got Demon's Soul, Uncharted, Infamous, and The Last of Us. In the PS4 generation, we got Bloodborne, Ghost of Tsushima, Horizon, Spider-Man, Days Gone, and the incredible The Order 1886. And what new original games do we have for PS5? Stellar Blade, Returnal, Rise of the Ronin, and Forspoken. Where 2 games are complete crap, and I won't say which ones. It feels like Sony just doesn't want to take any risks. For example, Horizon Forbidden West cost more than $100 million, and some of it was allocated for fast food for the main character. The risk of creating a new franchise that might fall is becoming too high for Sony. Instead, the company invests in proven games that are guaranteed to pay off, like Spider-Man 2 or God of War Ragnarok. But they needed to take risks, and they did, by losing hundreds of millions on the inclusive garbage can of Concord.
King Chopper!
We see how players no longer want only live services and remasters. Sony is in danger of losing its identity as a platform for big story-driven games, which is why it's so beloved. And this mysterious asshole who is responsible for this, and who you will soon learn about, actually wants to do nothing about this problem. The only announced releases from Sony are Wolverine, which is being consulted by Sweet Baby, which means it could be woke shit, and an unannounced new game from Naughty Dog. Now it becomes clear why Sony added backward compatibility for old games on the PS5, as there are no new games. We are forced to play remasters, and there would be no problem with this if they called the console Play Again Station 5 and Play Again Station 5 Pro. It seems that we are in a stage in the development of the gaming industry when exclusives will soon die. The development of modern games is becoming too expensive to justify exclusivity. People who mostly play on consoles are looking for the next generation experience. This experience is expensive. Innovation is expensive. And PlayStation, which has always been a symbol of innovation, is losing its own identity today. With the release of the PS5, many expected a breakthrough. Revolutionary games, new franchises, and a real golden era. Instead, we got remasters, the ridiculous PS5 Pro, and a focus on life services. Is this the result of Sony's greed or the influence of competitors? No, it's all the fault of this man. You, me, and all other gamers are the architects of the downfall of this generation of PlayStation. Gamers want everything at once. The best graphics, regular releases, and constant updates. Sony, like any large company focused on making money from a large audience, tries to meet these requirements, but quick decisions usually lead to compromises. For example, the PS5 Pro was created not because of a real need, but because of the constant pressure to improve. And while this seems like a desire for progress, in reality, it disperses resources that could be used to create new games. However, of course, it will be easier and more profitable for Sony to create just a new version of the console, which will be twice as expensive than to learn how to optimize games in 4K and 60 FPS. Another problem is the toxicity of the community. New franchises have almost no chance. For example, Forspoken received a wave of hate even before its release. Of course, this makes Sony avoid risks by investing only in proven franchises and remasters. Or maybe Sony is too stupid to realize that we don't need unfinished games where all they have is woke propaganda. But in any case, such failures deprive us of new ideas. It is also ironic that gamers criticize live services but spend billions on them. Fortnite and Genshin Impact dominate the audience choice, and Sony is trying to copy this trend with projects like Fair Games, which will obviously also be a failure. But all of this is moving the company away from its roots, which are great revolutionary story-driven games. Gamers vote with their wallets, and Sony responds.